Let's go ahead and get started and create a brand new Android Compose project. So open Android Studio, you can go and say File at the top. There are different ways to create a new project, but this is how I'm going to do it. And then we're going to have to get the empty Compose activity. So click on that. I'm going to say Next. And here we're going to create the project. I'm going to say, give it a name. I'm going to say Intro to Compose. So we're going to start from the beginning with Compose, so dissecting the major components of a Compose project and a Compose application. So whatever you want, you can name it. And of course, for a package name, mine is pre-populated with this package name, but you can choose whatever you want. And make sure you have a location where you're going to save this. So I do have a sandbox Android there in on my machine. Make sure we have Android Kotlin. For minimum SDK, I'm just going to go higher. Doesn't really matter at this point, but let's go to 10 or 30. I'm going to go 30 at this point. All right. Let's say finish. And so it may take a little while for the project to be created, so be patient. Wait until the process is done. And you can always see at the bottom here what says Gradle, configuring projects. So the Gradle, which is the machine, quote unquote, that does all the work in the background to validate, to put together the entire project, works in the background. So give it a time and it will be done soon. Okay, after a few moments, you will see that our project has been created and all seems to be good. Let's go over what we are seeing here. So to the left here, you will see that we have our Android project. The great thing about Android Studio is that it gives us different ways to view our files. So if you click at the top here, you can even change the view of your file. So you can go to project. We'll just show the project view, which means you'll have to drop in and look for files and so forth. Okay, that's a choice, but I liked the Android view because it just focuses on the files pertaining to the application. Okay, so you can also toggle it to close and open, right? The project tab here. And inside we have a few things. We have the manifests file, we have the manifest folder there, which has our Android manifest. And then we have the Java folder here, okay? It's kind of ironic that it says Java, even though we're going to be using Kotlin. But remember, Java and Kotlin are interoperable. And also the basis of everything really is Java. So Kotlin actually is also on top of Java. So that's totally fine. And if we open our Android, if we open Java, we'll see that we have a few packages here. So a package essentially, it's just a folder that contains related classes. So all of these are different packages. The main package we want is the first one here, right? And it's very interesting also to see that we have the main activity, which is exactly what's open. And then we have this UI theme, right? UI.theme. So this is all created for us. If you double click here, you can see that this is color.kt. So you can see color.kt holds all of the main colors that are used in our project. And you can see if I go to my theme file, double click, let's just see code, you'll see that somehow you can see that this is actually where the colors are being used. You see here we have a val called dark color palette, and we have dark colors, and we're passing, in this case, the primary colors, primary variant, and so forth. And we also have the light color palettes. Now, this dark and light color are used for different modes, therefore different UI modes. We have dark mode and we have light mode. So nowadays devices can be on dark mode or light mode. So right off the bat, our project gives that flexibility of dark and light mode and the colors that will be shown in one of those modes. And then we have this type. What is this type? Well, type here we have a few things. This is where we can set our typography. So talking about styles, fonts, and sizes, and so forth. There's a lot of things here, but we have the basics set up. You see here it says typography. The body is set to this style, okay? Which means if we want to use, for instance, we are in our main activity, we want to create a text, and we want to pass, let's say, a style, we can use this typography here, right, variable, and invoke the body to get the body style for the text we want to show. These are preset values. And obviously we can change those, as you see here, other default text styles to override. We can override all sort of things. So this is something that we're going to take a look later, obviously. All right, so, and we have shape. So for shapes here, we can actually use certain predetermined shapes for our user interfaces, for our widgets, as we create them in our main activity or anywhere else in our application. So we can create our own, obviously, but there are a few that are set as a default for us to use. As you see here, I have val shapes, and we are getting the shapes. As you can see here, if we get a small, we're going to get a rounded corner shape of 4 dp, which means if we use, for instance, a card and we want to have those rounded corners, we can right away say we want small. This is the value we're going to get for our rounded corner shape. For a medium, this is what we get, and large, that's what we get. Right? So all of this is given to us, and we can always override and customize. And of course, we have our resources folder here, and then we have our drawable here in our resource files. Okay, resource file, and then inside we have this drawable folder. This is where we can add images and so forth. And we also have the values folder here, where we have colors.xml. These are also the same representation of the colors that we saw earlier, that it's used still in Android development. Okay, these are still used, of course, internally, because remember, even though we're talking about compose, we're not saying that everything is stripped away in terms of how we used to build Android applications. This is just a quick overview of what we have here, and I do realize if you're an Android developer already, this may be very mundane to you, and you can always fast forward or skip this, but it's fine. But I just thought it would be good for everybody to actually get at least some idea of what's going on here. All right, so we will be spending a lot of our time in this folder here. So in our main activity, because we are creating a compose project here, this is what we see. Let me go ahead and close this down. Now we can split between code, just code, and split to see here the preview. If you refresh, we should see a preview in a second. Okay, after a few seconds, you can see now it says here, hello Android. Now, it's important to know exactly where is this being previewed from. Let's look at our code. You may think this is being previewed from here because this is where it's being called, but that's not true. If we go down here, we can see that we have this default preview. In fact, we should have a hint here that says default preview. So this is indeed the name of this function here. Okay. Now it's very interesting to also keep in mind that every composable function has to have this @composable annotation. So annotation is a way of adding meaning to certain functions or classes and so forth, to add metadata, to say, so that the compiler can know exactly what to do. There will be more directions as to what is it that it's going to be added onto the function or class that is being annotated. That's the idea. Although in Compose, the @compose is not necessarily annotation as you would have in any other circumstances, such as in Java and even Kotlin in a sense. So look at this as more of a keyword that tells the compiler that, okay, this is indeed a composable function, which means it should construct a piece of a user interface. But again, what is really making this available here in our preview is this @preview annotation there. And you see also, if you hover over anywhere, we get some documentation. This is really important and cool. So if whenever in doubt you don't understand is, for example, what this is or what something is, you can always hover over and you have a preview. You can see here it says this is a public constructor preview. Very good. That means we can pass all of these parameters. And you can see one of the parameters we pass is show background to boolean to true. What happens if I say false? Let's test things out. There we go. If I say false, then we lose that white background. All right. Back to true. And if you preview again, or actually hover over, I should say, the preview, you can play around with anything else that you want here, like a name. We can change the preview name to something else. I can say, for instance, name is equal to me, like this. And voila. The moment you do that, you can see it changed to me instead of default preview. So if you don't put anything specify, it's just going to go and get the name of the function. Let's rebuild again. Didn't have to do it. You can see it says default preview. Okay, so and next you can see here we have the intro to compose theme. This intro to compose theme, you notice it will take the name of the application that you created, that you typed in when we were creating this project, right? So what is this? Well, it's a pendant theme, so you could imagine that this is theme related. If you hover over again, you can see that this is at composable, which means is indeed a composable itself. It says public fun and intro to compose theme. And then here you can see that we can pass a few parameters, okay? And these parameters are optional, at least the first one. So the first parameter is dark theme. So it expects a boolean. So as the name implies, dark theme will allow us to say, okay, we want this to show in dark theme mode or not. And then we have this content here. The content is a composable function that is expected here. Interesting. And the beauty here, because you remember, if you've been following us, or if you remember your Kotlin, you remember if you have a function that has a function, another function as its last parameter, which is this case then, that means that we can use a lambda. As you see here, we can use a trailing lambda to invoke this content last parameter function. And of course, it's expecting at composable, which means expects any composable function to be shown or to be added. So in this case here, that's why you can see we have greeting, which indeed is a composable function. If I remove this composable there, we can have a lot of issues, because you're going to say, well, function which invokes a composable function must be marked with @composable annotation. So this is lesson number 1, to say that you can only call other composables inside of composable functions. Very good. So we're making progress here. We're going really slow because I really want you to get to know what we're dealing with in a very simple project. This is just a default project, a default Jetpack compose function. So we're going to go through a few things here and keep digesting so we can wrap our head around compose.